I know.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode, I believe, 153. Yes, but more importantly, number 10 of Operation Condor in my radio voice. Number 10, number
That's
10.
right.
But there's
From
really nothing.
NBC.
There's really nothing like musical theater about this topic, Greg.
No, no. There. This is. This has got a little bit of it all. I mean, this. I hate to say cabal, but it pretty much it's almost like a South American cabal. I mean, it's quite something. So this is gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
A South American cabal with slight CIA influences.
Just
Or
slight.
more than slight, right? So
Yeah.
everybody, welcome to the show. We're gonna try to keep this to an hour, a little bit more tonight. So strap in and get ready for Sinister Mysteries number 10. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms. Okay, good evening, everyone. So the
Hola.
outer realms of geopolitics, into the shadows. Craig, I know you and the guys are talking about a lot on Three Beards podcast every
Mhm.
Wednesday night at 8 p.m. By the way, folks.
Thank you for that.
Ruby Ridge last night. That was
Yes.
an interesting one.
Yeah.
And these fringe theories, these conspiracy theories. All I'm going to say is all of a sudden there's some interesting information coming out about a little town called WUHN and
Hmm.
its little science laboratory. So but what I like about what you and I are doing is we're going back in history and we're trying to give people some context. This is right along with the age of MK Ultra. This is right along the lines with this follows from the influence of paperclip. This goes all back to the Algerian War in France and what the War College in Paris was teaching. So that's what we're going to attempt to do tonight is get you guys up to speed on another piece.
Yeah. One thing is, Joey, I know you really liked it. I found it on YouTube. And I said, I recommend people. It's like, but if you guys want follow up for what we're talking about, it's called Operation Condor: All the Major Missions and Events from 1968 to 1989. And you'll see it. It's a really well done, thing. I said it shows you a lot of the stuff that you're just like, oh my god,
Yeah, it's very good. I just put it in the chat. Hindsight YouTube channel. The narrator, the host, is from South America, which gives it a certain authenticity. It's not,
and it's not the over heavy accent, so it's it's still really easy to understand. So it's really good.
And just the pictures and it's striking to see the pictures of these South American dictators with Henry Kissinger and with George H.W. Bush, and it really kind of brings it home. So we want to give love to our research the end, but it'll be so much the better. So this whole thing, Craig and I were talking before the show. We're going to give this to you in order. We're going to give it to you with context. As you know, I've portrayed Che Guevara. I've portrayed Allen Ginsberg, and a lot of the research from those pieces definitely comes into play with all of this. So it's a tale of 8 countries with right-wing dictators, all in the name of fighting the Cold War, stopping the spread of communism. And so why don't we get started, right?
Yeah, and you were very generous on there talking before the show. Have you ever seen that America's Tire Company commercial? That was me coming in right before the show, came screaming in. The door is shutting down. I come flying and sliding underneath, and I'm here. So yes, but we did discuss.
Know that you're a busy man.
So
you are a busy man. They don't need to know that.
I appreciate making it sound more professional. Yes. This is going to be good. So take it away, sir.
Yeah, so this is South America, primarily. We're talking about 8 countries with dictators that were either put into power with the help of the United States, certainly kept in power by the United States, and certainly through CIA backing. I'm just going to say up front that in 92, when President Clinton had to come out and sort of mea culpa for decades of CIA bad behavior, it was Operation Condor that triggered all of that.
That was definitely a part. I mean, it's pretty much like you said. I mean, you got Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, Bolivia, Peru, Brazil. And they're all involved in this thing. And the big perpetrator out of all this, though, is Argentina. Argentina is the linchpin. So as we go through this, they are the bad apple out of, if there's such a bad apple to isolate from this group.
And, that's the home of Juan and Eva Perón and, a certain brand of fascism. And so that's 1950s. But so anyway, what this is really about, Operation Condor was a program that over about a decade involved funding, training, and weapons to kill, torture, and disappear thousands of people. Tens of thousands of people in total. And the United States working with the military. Some of the dictators were generals. A lot of them were military juntas. So we're going to talk about that. And South America. Why South America? Well, Central America was the home of the banana republics. Folks, you need to get to know, if I haven't spoken about it before, I'd be surprised, United Fruit Company, especially in the 1950s, run by 2 families called the Rockefellers and the Dulleses. The Dulleses, of course, was John Foster Dulles, who was Sec State for JFK, and Allen Dulles, who was CIA head. And yet they owned massive tracts of land in Central America. But South America was a battleground between communism and let's call it U.S. brand of democracy. That's about as generous as I can be. Craig gave you a laundry list of countries. There's one additional one, Ecuador. They came a little.
Oh yeah, forgot that one. Sorry.
No, that's okay. They came a little late to the table. Chile and Ecuador in the early 1950s. This is Anaconda Copper Mining Company. Craig, this is all so follow the money.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you go through here and you see this is why the U.S. didn't have. They used the guise of communism as the reason, but when you actually go through these and you actually start bringing things, you realize, like what Joey just laid out, that is the purpose of this thing, is access to these raw materials, to these things for industry. Because why else you think the Rockefellers really care if you're communist or if you're a thing? No, as long as they have access to that, they're like, I don't care. I mean,
and communism was very difficult to define. Che Guevara actually sided with Chinese communism. He thought Russian communism was a lie. He said they all drive Mercedes and eat off porcelain plates. They drink very expensive vodka. So these guys aren't communists at all, which is very, very interesting. And Che also once defined communism as anything with which El Jefe does not agree. So that was kind of interesting. Anything that's bad for business was communism. Folks, I am very sorry.
While he's doing that, sponsor plug. Yeah. So this is, this is one of those things where, like, Che Guevara, because you can see this whole area during this time was becoming infatuated with the idea of communism. For anybody that's you grew up hating it and stuff, the terms themselves, when you actually get into communism, who doesn't like the idea of healthcare for all, food for all, housing for all, clothing for all? Everybody has everything. Nobody wants it. On paper, it is the utopian thing. Everybody's like, oh my God, you want this. But every time it's practiced, there is death. There is multiple deaths. People have to die. And even this, when they talk about these ones that Kissinger, CIA were trying to depose, that when they're talking about it, even these communist ones coming in are saying, oh yeah, there's going to be people that we got to kill them. Yep. I mean, they talk openly, we got to kill these ones that don't want to convert. So you can see right there, it's supposed to be a utopia, but they're always talking about death. And that's, and that's what they do to drum up bringing people into this thing. It's like, we have to stop this. Look what they're wanting to do, and you get the people rah, yeah, let's fight communism. But then you don't realize the Rockefellers are loading up, container ship after container ship of raw materials and just hauling them out of there. And that, Scrooge McDuck type thing, just basking in the cash.
You're setting up a situation. U.S. globalism sets up a situation where it impoverishes these countries, so communism looks like a solution. Here's an uncomfortable, unpleasant fact, folks. After the Cuban Revolution, when Fidel came into power, he desperately wanted to ally with the United States. He came to New York City. 1959, he was very, very popular. They called them Los Barbudos, the bearded ones. Kids were getting field caps and, fake beards. It was all the rage. They were hanging out with the New York intellectual elite. He went down to D.C. to meet with Eisenhower. Eisenhower wouldn't meet with him. Eisenhower went and camped out at Camp David, and he left Nixon to talk to him. One of the most unreasonable, egomaniacal, paranoid men ever. So Ike comes back and goes, hey, Tricky, what did you think? And he goes, bad juju. Can't work with these people. So Fidel's trying to build a country out of nothing, build literism, because what had happened in Cuba, and it's very germane to what we're talking about here tonight, is that a dude named Batista takes over. He's a puppet of the United States. So Havana, Cuba becomes sort of like a Las Vegas, run by the mafia, Meyer Lansky, all these characters who figure into the whole, Kennedy mythology. And the U.S. Navy is using it as a playground, as a lecherous playground. So anyhow, you mentioned Argentina, Craig. And in the 1950s, Argentina participates in something called the War School in Paris. Now, the War School in Paris had been built with the long war against Algeria for independence. It was brutal. It was an absolutely brutal war. So they're teaching torture tactics. That's one way to subdue the enemy. And death flights, where you fly someone over the ocean, open ocean, and you hold them out of an airplane. Yeah. And you ask them for information, or you just dump them. The United States did engage in this in Vietnam. My dad was in naval intelligence. He was a cryptographer in the Naval Security Group. He was openly confronted. He was getting a medal later in life for something he had done through the VFW. And he was confronted by a guy who said, you sons of bitches, and what you did throwing people out of helicopters and airplanes. But this is a death flight thing. So let's start in June 1954. Coup d'etat in Guatemala, where Arbenz, who was democratically elected, is removed. That August, CIA-backed mercenaries massacre his supporters. So this goes way back. The Cuban Revolution's won. I told you about all of that kind of stuff. Fidel's trying to get rid of something called latifundia. Latifundia are private land estates. Well, Give the land back to the people. These are people who are propped up by U.S. interests, by Rockefeller, and they don't have the best interests of their country. So I guess here would be like if there was a revolution and you kicked Jeff Bezos out of his mansion, you kicked Elon Musk out of his mansion. I don't know how people feel about that, but that was the idea. But in the early 1960s, as Ike is handing off power to JFK, and they're both talking about, right, the military-industrial complex and shadow governments and nefarious interests. Craig, I think they were talking about paperclip really getting a foothold in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Those Nazis really infiltrating. They have to figure out what the hell they're going to do. So in 1960, Eisenhower does a 2-week tour of South America. He's in Chile. Allen Ginsberg, my old pal, is sitting in the audience, and he's offering economic and military support. If these countries will just play nice with the United States, we'll give you everything you need. We'll prop you up. So it's very interesting to me that on one hand, Eisenhower's talking about the military-industrial complex. On the other hand, he's exporting it to South America and strengthening it in the process, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you wonder if it was more of, because you've talked several times like the predictive programming.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense like if he was just like throwing it out there so that way it wasn't some like, what are you talking about? It just became in the system, and he never actually, it seemed like he was against it, but like I said, when you turn around, it sure seems like he promotes it.
Yeah,
like he's actually a fan of it. I mean, maybe by that time he was already beholden to him. And that was like his parting shot. Like, my mea culpa. I wish, be afraid of it. I wish I had been afraid, but it's too late. They've already got the hooks in me.
Yeah. And I've read on the show before excerpts from Kennedy's speech to I believe it was the National Press Association, warning about all this stuff. And he was a great exporter and perpetrator of it. So he's elected in November 1960. In April 61, we have the Bay of Pigs. And then May of 1960 in the Dominican Republic, Rafael El Jefe Trujillo is assassinated by a group led by a general. So we start to see this trend now. Now, Trujillo was not a nice guy, but this is this Latin American trend of generals overthrowing leaders. August 61, Che is talking to the Organization of American States, which he called really a front for the CIA and for globalism. And he denounces Kennedy's Alliance for Progress. So they kick Cuba out in 62. So that door closes of any kind of good relationships between Cuba and the United States. And all of these South American countries are watching Cuba really closely as they sort of settle under the mattress with the communists. Mm-hmm. Again, like, hey, Khrushchev said, no problem. We'll buy your sugar at a good price. We'll give you oil at a cheap price. So people sometimes don't know that. I'm not deifying any of these people, folks. Just because I play Che Guevara, complicated guy. But, none of this is cut and dry. 65 in Bolivia, tin workers' wages are cut by 50%. 500 workers, including children, are killed. All right, now everything's warming up. In May of 67, the U.S. Special Forces are training the army in Bolivia. And in June, there's a mine massacre. In October, Che Guevara is killed in Bolivia. Now, he was a dissident who infiltrated the country, was stirring up rebellion. He was a legitimate target. The circumstances were shady. The CIA was involved. August 68 is the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, and the mess that was. This was engineering to make sure that Nixon was the guy. They succeeded with that. And by the early 70s, with Nixon and Kissinger running the show, especially Kissinger, many governments are overthrown by U.S. ally dictators. And Craig, that really leads to the 7 coups.
Yeah, and that's kind of where in the 1976, that's when all those members for Plan Condor, they get together and they start talking about, so these coups have happened. They've thrown out the leaders that are pro-communism, they're pro this, And now we have basically these U.S. CIA puppets who have been, like I said, they've been trained, they've been supported. So as long as the U.S. is backing them, they're strong. But if at any point we're like, yeah, we're done with you, it's going to topple right away, because they're literally paper, just trying to say paper tigers.
Yeah.
And so they do this. They have this meeting for playing Condor, and this I want to say it was Santiago, Chile.
Yeah,
where,
sure was Santiago de Chile. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so they start talking about holding through a cooperation where it's almost in a way it's kind of like they were creating their version of the MI6. These special agents that would go abroad and go after dissidents, political, asylees, anybody that's fled, like the former leader has left. Well, they're like, okay, now we're not going to let them, create a resistance elsewhere. We got to take them out before they can sow the seeds of destruction of our own demise. And so they do this. And I want to say the total was somewhere between 400 and 500. I want to say it's right there. It's the 400 range, something of people that were killed in these operations.
Oh yeah, the numbers is crazy.
And so and we're not talking in country. I mean, just like the people that were just rounded up in a house. No, we're talking like there was one. God, I don't have his name right on the top of me. He was killed in Washington D.C.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They assassinated.
Yep. I didn't put his name down, but he was the minister. We'll get to him. We'll definitely get to him. But the numbers. This all came out in 1992. There were 660,000 documents that were discovered in Paraguay, detailing all of Operation Condor. That's how it came to light, and the CIA's involvement. 50,000 murders over the decade, 30,000 disappearances, and 400,000 people detained. These are big numbers. This was not a small operation. Craig, I just want to go really
didn't
quickly.
They call that the Archive of Terror? Isn't that what they nicknamed it? The Archives of Terror? Yeah.
I want to go really quickly through the 7 coups, really quickly.
Yeah.
There was a general who did it in 1954 in Paraguay, sort of kicked this whole thing off. In Brazil, there was a president. His name was João Goulart, and he did not care for Kennedy. He was vocal in his opposition to the U.S. invasion of Canada. He wanted higher taxes for multinationals, and he wanted more power over Brazil's economy. Imagine that. The president of a company wanting more power over where the dollars go and where they remain. That was the whole idea behind MAGA, right? Keep the dollars in country, strengthen them. Kennedy did not care for this at all, and it's on record, folks. Definitely watch that hindsight YouTube video. You could see pictures of the documents. He said that Goulart was giving away the damn country to the communists. That damn giving away the damn country there. And so he directed his people, and it's right in black and white, folks. You can read it. He directed his people to foster relationships with the Brazilian army. That's how business was being done. In March of 1964, he was overthrown by military junta, and a guy named Branco, he was a U.S. puppet. 50% of Brazil's industry was taken over by foreign interests within 2 years of this shift. So follow that. Hey, we don't like the United States. They're raping our country. So get that guy out. And within 2 years, it's a fire sale. It's a fire sale of Brazilian industry. In Bolivia, Kissinger engineers a foreign action to remove him through economic and military support. Another general takes over, General Banzer. The leader goes to Argentina, but he's taken out. Uruguay, general union labor strike. There's a strike against the strikers. who were killed, exiled, or jailed. This guy, Bordaberry, closed the parliament and started a military dictatorship in 1973, again with U.S. backing. So if our union struck here in the United States, well, like they did at the time of the Rockefeller strike breakers, right? In the West Virginia coal mines, you go in and kill everybody. April 1970, Nixon's expanding the Vietnam War. He's invading Cambodia. May 70, there's the war protests. Ginsburg is screaming about CIA drug trafficking. Tune in 2 weeks, folks, where we bring you Air America.
Yes.
Chile, Salvador Allende, democratically elected president. He was a communist. He had no tethers on him whatsoever. He was just full-blown communism. He loved it. Nixon and Kissinger get together. Again, you can read the documents. They say, we want to put $10 million into this country. We want to put the best men on it. And we want those guys to work with the local opposition to ruin the economy. So this is high stakes. Why? The United States has $1 billion invested in the country, and they're owed $1.5 billion. So we go, yeah, this is no good. Wreck their economy, and we'll pick up the pieces. Let's see here. So in September of 1973, on the 11th, oddly enough, the military bombs the palace. Allende commits suicide. He's replaced by Augusto Pinochet. Now, why is Pinochet really important? First of all, he's vicious. He's a vicious SOB. But Craig told you all how all these countries got together to make Operation Condor. They did it on Pinochet's birthday. Let's have a birthday party and create this 8-state kill machine. That's a party.
Happy birthday.
That's a party. That's a party. In a declassified memo, Nixon and Kissinger say that they set up the conditions for Allende to be removed, but they didn't do it. They just set up the conditions. The people did it, not them. And then Peru was in 75, overthrown by his own prime minister. Then a general takes over. Argentina, 76. There's a military parade within hours. They take over the airwaves. It was very similar to when they got rid of, what was his name, who wound up house arrest in, he followed Gorbachev. Do you remember his name?
Oh,
He had a drinking problem. But they put him under house arrest, and suddenly on TV they're rolling tanks. That's what that kind of reminds me of. I know who you're talking about. The name is failing me too. Yeah. So let's jump to Argentina, like you said, dirty pool. 73 to 76, the dirty war. Big numbers. They post big numbers under Operation Condor, right? Oh yeah, they that's where a majority of this, this happened. I mean, when you watch the documentary too, it'll show you there's also a companion one they showed, and it shows the photos of all these people. Yeltsin. Yep. Boris Yeltsin. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to Mark, and thank you to Charles for covering us. Yeah. And that's correct. Yeah, they estimate 60 to 80,000 suspected casualties. For and we're not talking, we're talking just death, but it's unknown. Basically, all they can go off of is these archives that they found. I mean, that's the only way to really know, because basically give people an idea. It's like you and your family are talking about how you're in Chile and you're talking about how Pinochet is I don't like this guy. I'm looking for this. Well, all of a sudden, Dad doesn't come home. Yeah, nobody knows where Dad is. He doesn't show up to work. He doesn't show up. He's just gone. There's no trace. He's just gone. Well, these people, they go decades. They have no idea. And then these archives are found, and here is a file folder with his photo and a description of what happened to him. And now they have. So in this one, there's this lady. She's actually going through this journal, and she's actually giving people at least the closure of knowing what happened to their loved one. Yeah, it's bad. We're talking over 400,000 political prisoners, but we're 60 to 80,000 people are killed, and it's just basically they deemed you subversive, deemed you a threat, and you get disappeared. Right, you're gone. And I was just going to bring up that word That's they talk about that in Latin America a lot. They talk about it in Mexico with everything going on there with the gang wars and all, and it's disappeared.
Now, did you catch it in your, like, since you brought Mexico, that they were actually involved a little bit with Condor?
Yeah, just a tiny bit. Yeah.
Yeah, in the mid 70s, they were doing that because they were trying to fight, as we all think that, drugs.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So I think the best way to explain this is this program was so successful, folks, that Britain, France, and Germany consulted with them on their methods, on how to bust propaganda, how to bust agitators, dissidents. They said, wow, guys, we're Europe and we're very civilized. So can you kind of school us on being a little less civilized? France noticed, well, France is on the list, but France was already pretty good at it. Uruguay is a really good example of local police and military training by the CIA. Now, some Uruguayan activists went to Brazil. They were kidnapped, brought to the country, and tortured, and I think eventually disappeared. So, Craig, let's talk about, and I brought this up with Jim Jones and the People's Temple. 61,000 members of the South American military were trained at something called the CIA School of the Americas in Panama.
Yeah, sounds innocuous, like just it's a School of America, the School of the Americas. This is literally a training camp for how to interrogate and torture. I mean, and not a lot of people did. And I want to say, if maybe. Yeah, number wasn't it like 40,000?
Yeah,
people went to the school and were trained.
61,000.
Yeah. I mean, it's this ungodly number of people that are trained in this thing, and these are literally, it doesn't matter. You see all these they do a lot of movies where they have the person come in, they got the train, like how to administer the drugs and stuff. This is basically, like you said, they were learning from these groups down here in South America. They're like, oh my God, you guys are, without making it sound glorified, you guys are so efficient. You guys are so amazing. How do you do this? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the stuff that happened during the Gulf Wars and stuff like that was information techniques that even the CIA picked up from these guys.
Oh yeah, those off the map, off the grid detainment centers that were all over Afghanistan and Iraq. I knew a guy who was assigned to one of those places.
Chicago.
Makes Guantanamo look like Disneyland.
Like Chicago.
Yeah. Do we need to be trained how to torture? Well, our friend Ronald over at Earth Radio asks, who replays our shows on Thursday night.
I would say yes, because anybody can be depraved. Like a serial killer, anybody can do these things. These guys didn't just go hack somebody up until they talked. They literally, it was almost a psychological breakdown. They would actually break these people down to the very depths of their soul, to where they spilled everything. And then, most of these people, they're already broken, so they would toss, they get killed. But they did it to where, somebody wasn't taking their last breath and finally just said, and admitted it. No, they literally bawling. I mean, they talk about all this stuff, that they were so distraught that they were just willingly just gave everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And think about Abu Ghraib and the, what was his name? Andrew Wu was legal counsel for the Bush II administration, and they did the workaround for detainments and torture. I think his name was Andrew Wu.
Yes, Charles, exactly. MK Ultra, that's one of those things. You, like Joey always talks about, parallels and patterns. This, you can see how this is all connected. CIA teaches you basically what we talked about in the MK Ultra episode. A little side note here. It's compartmentalizing all these things. They basically took apart and said, here, South America, run with it. Yeah. And then they did all the work. They came all here, and all they did is just like, hey, can I have those notes? Thank you. And then that's it. They did all the dirty work, and all I did was just made sure I came back to Langley. And hey, look what I got. And now you have all this work. And you're like, well, you torture these people. No, I didn't. I didn't do this. And that's what's so depraved about, about this thing. I mean, we've talked about, China, the Japanese.
Right.
Yeah. You just go through. It seems it's all connected.
And it really is. And that's what we're endeavoring to do over time. And out of order. So collect the cards, watch the episodes, and make the tapestry. But you were talking about breaking people down and throwing them away. The MK Ultra Operation Artichoke and all that was break them down and then do psychic driving to turn them into Manchurian candidates or all that kind of stuff. So lots of different flavors of this particular ice cream. Let's see here. Of course, Panama, if it rings a bell, that's because, Manuel Noriega. That was his hometown. That's a jolly guy. Here's some by the numbers. In Bolivia, 3,000 people are arrested, 200 are killed, many are tortured, 2,000 are detained in the basement of the Ministry of the Interior, which was dubbed the horror chambers.
Is it a government building?
Yeah.
Literally a government building. It's the horror chamber. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of the researchers who have written about the horror chambers say, I can't even bring myself to write what really took place in this place. So I'll say, folks, don't use your imagination. Just remember horror chamber.
I mean, caveat for me, in a way, you see something, but in a way, I hope that somebody does find the courage and the strength to actually talk about what happened. Because that's so important with history. If you don't learn your history, you can't guard against it. You can't see like, hey, this is going on right now, and that's what leads to this. You've got to be able to spot these things. And unfortunately, something this traumatic, you basically have to, almost coerce somebody to spill this information. But it's so, in a way, to me, it just feels like critical.
Yeah, you're also going to lose a big part of your audience because people just can't handle it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So maybe horror chambers, and those of us who have the stomach for it, who know that it's a necessary evil, just like Samuel Chung on the show last week. I did not go into detail with the way that guy was initiated and the way they turned him into a killer within weeks. But it's there. So in Paraguay, the CIA helps build a torture chamber that's called La Technica. So that's good. Let's use all this stuff to do this. Again, this is another place where people will just go, look, this was some dark crap. Now, I will give you a little bit of an example. The head of the Communist Party in Paraguay was tortured to death while the dictator of Paraguay, General Stroessner, sat on the phone and listened. Then it was recorded and it was played for the guy's family, and it was played for anyone else who was thinking about screwing with the Paraguayan government, such as it was. That's a pretty good example.
Oh,
so I get tortured to death while the president listens, then they play a recording for my family. So not only am I gone, but they know exactly how I went and the fear in my voice and the very last things that I said, and how I was probably vacating my intestines and whatever. It's horrific.
In a little side, in that one, that's how you develop, terror, people that have the terroristic, intentions towards, the U.S. involvement. Because you say, it's like, why would you hate this one? Why do you hate the U.S.? Because people always ask those questions, like, why do these guys hate us? Yeah. But when you actually break down, you find out it's like that family. Do you think anybody in that family has any love for, has a real love for the United States, or anybody in this thing? They probably hold some deep resentment, and that's where you see a lot of these people. It's terrible. I mean, it's really terrible.
It's this country's legacy, right? Whether it's westward expansion and imminent domain and everything that went along with that, or participation, one of the last countries in the world to outlaw slavery. Britain and other countries outlawed it way before we did. And the point being, how about 9/11, right? People like Bill Maher and people, I forget his name, but there was a professor at the University of Wisconsin, and they sat in front of people and they said, let's talk about what makes enemies of this country fly airplanes into our buildings. And people don't want to talk about it. It's really, really tough. We've finally gotten beyond the myth of American exceptionalism. People are going, yeah, okay. Where are we at now? And maybe we weren't ever so exceptional. But it's still a really difficult conversation to have. So, Craig, I appreciate you bringing that up. American policies around the world have created a lot of ill will. A lot of ill will. In Chile, 30,000 people are detained. Here's where it all blows up. These guys go too far. Quite simply, they go too far. Now, some people are assassinated in France. Some people are assassinated here and there. Part of the Operation Condor was an agreement. Like, if you need to come into my country and kill some people, come into my country and kill some people. Like, don't worry about it.
Now they're going worldwide.
All these open border agreements for assassins. But on September 26, 1976, in Washington, D.C. Now, I'm a lad of 8 years old. Craig, I'm sure you weren't even born yet in 76, right? There you go.
One.
So we weren't watching the news then. But Pinochet, our old friend, has Allende's old minister of defense, who was an outspoken critic, assassinated right in D.C. And Pinochet tries to hide his involvement from the CIA, because we hear about these things every once in a while in history where the CIA props up these people and then they go rogue. And then there's this conversation like, what the actual hell did you do? And Pinochet's like, I didn't do anything. I don't even know about it. So this is where the whole thing kind of is starting to fall to pieces. 1978, we have two really important events. The New York Times tells Ginsburg publicly that he was right about U.S. drug smuggling through the CIA to fund black ops, to use drugs to
like for 2 weeks.
Destroy. Yeah.
Like for 2 weeks.
As we talked about a couple weeks ago with Sinister Ministries, Leo Ryan, who was gunned down right in Guyana on an airstrip, U.S. congressman, had floated the Ryan Hughes Amendment, where the CIA needed to report about covert ops. So he winds up getting sent to Guyana and gets gunned down, killed. And guess what? Does anybody pick up the Ryan Hughes Amendment and go, in honor of our poor dead friend Leo, who got gunned down in a foreign country, we're going to make this amendment happen? No.
No, they all got the memo.
It disappeared.
They all got the memo.
Yeah, it disappeared. They got the memo. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Which was wrapped around, I think, a bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was pretty much just slid over. It's like, what's that for? That's got your name on it.
There you go. It could go in your pocket or between your eyes. You decide. There you go. So in 1986 in Santiago de Chile, 2 protesters are burned alive by the army. One of them was Canadian. And this caused a stir because he died. The woman was badly scarred. I believe there's a picture of her, Craig, towards the end of the YouTube video, maybe, because I watched several others. But I think she's there. So from 86 to 89, all these military dictatorships are falling. What happened in 1989 geopolitically that might have allowed the United States to pull backing from all these horrific people?
A certain thing fell.
Yeah, communism fell. And so now, we don't have to prop up all these bastards, because if they want to go with something that's broken, let them. So no coincidence. These are the parallels and patterns, folks. This is where correlation really does become causation. And then, as I pointed out to my colleague, and he was a little bit impressed during the week, in 1991, just 2 short years later, communism has fallen. All these dictators are out of power. We turn our attention to the Middle East. Really, for the first time, we turn our attention to the Middle East. Now, arguably 1979, when Russia goes into Afghanistan and we're propping up the Taliban and arming them, that comes back to bite us in the ass 20 years later. But isn't that convenient?
It is, and after you said that, I was waiting for the show to bring up this thing, see what you thought about this. What happens in between these periods too? There's a huge thing. There's a scandal between the military, the president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, and a certain little thing called the Iran-Contra affair.
Right on, brother.
So was this a setup for a reason to go to the Middle East now? Because now the Middle East is involved. So now you've kind of set in motion this theater, and you've also taken out somebody who, in the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, as I haven't done a whole lot of research, I want to say that Noriega was originally aligned, and then it was basically we just decided, nope, he's done.
Yeah, and he was he was a little bit like Gaddafi and those guys. He was a little kooky in the desert, you know?
Yeah, because Gaddafi had almost like you were saying with the Castros. Remember his whole tent set up where he was there in New York City? Yeah. He had his whole thing. Everybody was just really welcomed him. Well, that was the only part like why he was taken out is because he was not going with the program.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to get a mind of your own. You don't want to be like Pinochet and have people gunned down in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Like, don't, yeah.
No. Literally, send your James Bond, your version of James Bond. I'm not sure. Would it be Juan Bond? You know.
Yeah, it would be.
You know, to DC, you know, to take him out. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a T-shirt right there.
There you go. So it's worth recapping, folks. So in 1992, they find these documents. 660,000 of them, really good record keepers. That always astonishes me, Craig. That's right up there when you're having an affair and you save all the texts and pictures on your phone. Mm-hmm. Let's write it all down. Let's catalog it all.
Yeah, because that was, you know, when they discovered that, that's the thing. I was just like, you know, I mean, in a way, is it like how the serial killer has to keep a memento? It's like you want to keep these things, but it's like, why are they all here? It was almost just like they got just so bold they didn't care.
Yeah.
They were just like, you know, yeah, it almost feels like you just had an accounting team that was just like keeping track. It was just crazy.
You know who else did that? The Nazis.
Yeah.
The Nazis were flawless record keepers because this was all science. This was all process. This was all business, right? It was business.
So would this be Nazis that infiltrated Argentina?
Well,
and so that mindset kind of infiltrated into, because I mean that would be the same, you know, because that would be an interesting thing to figure out if anybody from a Nazi, you know, that was from the Nazi regime, if they actually infiltrated and were used in any way from Argentina in these countries, because that's where, you know, that's where a lot of them migrated to. So obviously it was a sympathetic nation.
Yeah. Charles brings up a good point here, and we have some time because we're almost done with this, so we can tease out some things as the audience wants to talk about, which I think will be cool. Who really took out the Shah of Iran? That's an interesting question. I will tell you guys, I will give you a little nugget because we couldn't do a whole show on it. So Jimmy Carter becomes president through guys like Stansfield Turner, through guys like Brzezinski, who was sort of a Kissinger type, worked in the shadows. We don't want anybody who's too powerful. You know, we're still getting over Nixon and his paranoia and abuse of power. So these guys are sort of running Jimmy Carter. And, you know, Carter's in hospice now, but he became over time. He's a statesman, Habitat for Humanity, a statesman. That was his role. He was never meant to be president of the United States. He was working deals. Craig, I sent you little bits and pieces from some of these academic articles that I was doing, places like Pakistan. The head of Pakistan during the Carter administration had Carter over a barrel because they needed Pakistan as a staging area for military and intelligence operations. So he was getting fighter jets. He was getting things the United States didn't want to give. So this is an ugly time. Carter he's castrated, man, and he cannot get anything done when the Iranian hostages are taken at the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah.
In comes in Ronald Reagan, and he works a backdoor deal. He negotiates without being president. He negotiates the release of the hostages down the road at the opportune time. So just hold on to them for a little while longer. Then they staged a spectacular thing.
Mhm.
That's right in line with our Sinister Mysteries. It's a little side pocket.
Yeah,
I thought that was worth bringing up. I hope you don't mind.
no, that's one of the things. It's like I try to when I talked about people of these, it's not, because you're going to get the people that's like, why do you hate America? It is like, that's not what this is.
No.
This is acknowledging where we have failed, where we have made mistakes, where there was definitely something nefarious that happened. Doesn't mean everything is, but you can see this is where, when you see some of the things, why is this country doing this? Well, most likely it's because at some point, somebody in the CIA, somebody high up in it, has betrayed somebody, and it's made, and you see it down the road. You don't usually see it immediately because they don't have those things. You'll see it down the road. And Charles, I think, brought it up. Osama bin Laden was one of those key figures. He was a CIA operative, and we ended up like we normally do. We betrayed these people. So what happens? He now switches and says, I will seek revenge on those who have wronged me. And, fast forward, you have these things that occurred from Al Qaeda. And this is what I think. So did they intentionally do this to form this to for the military industrial? You can have that conspiracy. There's people, you can make cases for this. Right. But it really looks like a lot of these people that we have this, it's just as simple. This is their reaction to being screwed over. You promised me this. I'm mad.
Yeah.
You promised to back me. Now I'm out. I'm mad.
Yeah. And really, it's American foreign policy because of the corporate oligarchy, military industrial intelligence complex, or the comic, as I call it. American foreign policy is really 8 words. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yep.
So these are people that under normal circumstances, in a world where democracy was really flourishing and it really was an exportable benefit instead of a product, you wouldn't get into bed with the enemy of your enemy simply because they were enemy. And that's why this stuff constantly cycles through. And we go, oh, why are these guys so well armed? Because a decade ago, we armed them.
Yep. So
now they're killing our soldiers with our own weapons.
Yeah, and that's, for everybody that slammed, like, Biden's, he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't think he made that decision. Leaving all that stuff behind, that was staging. That was preparing for, after everybody forgets, all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh my God, and now we're fighting this other armed group. And it's pretty easy to see. And then as we're running out of time here, pretty much one of the real tragedies of this is very few people are brought to justice. Nobody in the U.S. is brought to justice over this. I know that the Peruvian dictator, Bermudez, he gets life imprisonment in Italy. I think they convict him there. I think along with, I think if I'm looking at here my notes, Prime Minister, I think it was the Prime Minister, Prada, and the General Figueroa, are all, they're convicted not for what they did in Peru or anything. It's for what they did in Italy.
Yeah.
And so that's where Joey had talked earlier about, they got emboldened and started this worldwide campaign of going after these people. And that's what did these guys in. And that's the thing. So you killed a couple thousand back at home. We're going to let you slide. You killed 3 people in Italy. You're in prison. At least there's justice, in some of these things. But a lot of these people died of old age in their own homes.
Yeah.
They didn't, nobody saw any real punishment. And nobody in the U.S. has been held responsible for their actions in this.
Not at all. The School of the Americas, or AKA the School of the Assassins, was closed in 1985 pretty quietly. They got everything that they could out of it. The only thing I want to add to the punishment list, Craig, is Bonzer. Back to our Argentina there, General Bonzer. He served 5 years, and then the new president of Argentina pardoned him. But that was later overturned, and they sent that guy back to prison at 84. Doubt that prison really looked like a prison that much.
No, it's going to be like the mobster movies where he's got the kitchen, he's got the dining room tables, he's got all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And there you go. You're talking about getting pissed off. Of course, Osama's breaking point was American bases in his holy land, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, there you go. And I don't know, you could do 3 episodes on our relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely some stuff there. But no, as we're going here, everybody, we've teased a couple times. Joey did a masterful job of teasing for it, but 2 weeks, Air America. It's going to be the CIA and how they kicked the drug trade into hyperdrive.
Yeah, and somehow it's not just a movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Mel Gibson.
No.
Although I will probably try to watch that in the next couple of weeks, and we can kind of talk about, sort of a pop culture version of Air America.
Because they definitely, for lack of better terms, whitewashed, what Air America thing is. But that one, it's going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty amazing. Some people I think know a little bit about it, but I don't think people realize just how prevalently. I think that's I'm struggling with that word. Just how big the CIA was involved with everybody. What we're dealing with right now with all these cartels in Mexico, in Colombia, most of these people are puppets of the CIA.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be, they're only there because the CIA allows it. I mean, these guys can be taken out at any moment. They play ball. And eventually you have to, one has to go.
Yeah.
It's, they don't play ball. So guess what? All of a sudden they're sitting in some prison in the Midwest.
Yeah.
But
they really enjoy them. They really enjoy it while it lasts, though. They do leave their countries dry, while they're in the hot seat. So, hey, the big boss says, great show, guys. So another plug for Radio. So here's the plan, folks. 8:00 Wednesday night, you can watch the Three Beards live. They usually run about an hour and a half. You can take a little break. You can listen to us on the radio at 10, followed by us on the Radio Three Beards. How far behind are your episodes, or are they just 1 week? 1 week. Okay, mine are 3.
So next week you'll get to hear the replay of Ruby Ridge.
Yeah.
And the Bundy so that one was a Ruby Ridge to Rebellion. That was the title of that show.
So guys, we're letting you out of school a little early tonight.
Yes.
So go do something fun and look up some of this stuff. Craig, I haven't gotten an email in all 153 shows going, boy, you're full of ass. Boy, you got your facts wrong. So
and that's good.
We're going to continue with that.
Yeah, and that's awesome because that's the goal. I mean, it's like, especially with the comments, everybody, thank you. Comment, like, share, follow Joey Medea on YouTube. Those help get that to grow. But that really helps there too, because it's one of those things. If I got something wrong, tell me, because one, I like to learn. If I get something, it's like, no, you need to check this out. Put that in the comments. Like I said, watch the URLs. Watch those. Don't post
Craig.
Yeah, don't post some links because that can get us in trouble.
Yeah, so kind of good news, bad news, but mostly good news. All of the platforms that Into the Outer Realms are growing, and especially YouTube. But we did have an incident, and I don't want to call it an incident. Someone on the Into the Outer Realms Facebook page posted a URL to a site that is really frowned upon by the tech giants. That's the fact. We can't go into the veracity of the site. I certainly don't have time to read all the you could drop, they're right wing, they're ultra right wing. But the algorithms are constantly going, the algorithm checkers. And if they catch a URL, they could shut down our page. They could shadow ban us. So that's why we posted. It's pinned to the top of the page now. Lori posts links to books and things like that. Of course, that's fine. We sort of have an in-house team. And no offense to anyone. It doesn't happen very often. I consulted with Craig on it. but that was the kind of URL that would probably get us either shadow banned or get the show taken down.
Yeah,
And,
you just got to be careful. So if it gets deleted, don't take it personal.
Right.
It was just one of those. It's kind of like it keeps us able to just hold the shows. So
yeah.
But thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Thank you all. We'll see you next week. Oh, Carl Petrie, not only a psychic, but this guy has spontaneously trips to other time. It's fascinating. Cool. And was very, very close with Rosemary Ellen Guiley, my mentor. So we're going to be talking about her. And then Craig and I will be back in 2 weeks. And it's all good stuff. All the way through the summer, we're booked. So we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.